Welcome back to the podcast, Life Through My Lens. I know it's been a little bit since I've been able to hop on here and record since the introduction, but honestly, after I recorded the intro to this podcast, life got a little bit busy, and I've been on the go quite a bit. But happy to be here today. Happy to be able to actually sit down and calmly do this episode. Got some big things happening tomorrow as far as another portion of this podcast that I'll address later on. But I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's a very positive thing. We'll touch on that much later. But as far as today goes, I wanted to hop on here to talk about my own personal experience throughout my entire life with depression and anxiety. Now, I know I have touched on this on a prior podcast that I did, but today I want to elaborate a little bit further on some of these things. I've dealt with and battled through depression my entire life. As a child, teenager, into my young adulthood, and all the way till now, I still battle it. It's gotten easier over time because I've learned some coping mechanisms, and through trial and error, I've been able to come out on the better side of things. But anxiety didn't really kick in until my teenage years in high school. It got real bad in high school. Actually, it got so bad in high school to the point to where it was one of the leading reasons why I stopped going to school altogether. I had a lot more to go along with that, but I probably would have stuck with school, high school in Antioch, at least a lot longer, if not graduated, had it not been for how severe my anxiety had become. And back then when I was dealing with this depression, I would feel these days where when I was a kid, I'd be down and out for absolutely no reason. And I think back about that, and I didn't know why I was sad. I remember specifically there would be times where I would be a little kid and I'd be in the bathtub playing with my toys, and just all of a sudden out of nowhere it becomes sad. And it never made sense to me. And I would start thinking really sad thoughts and start missing people, specifically my aunt. Her name was Ruby, and I would start really missing her to the point sometimes I would cry, and it didn't make any sense to me. And I just kind of chalked it up to, it is what it is. 'Cause I was a kid and I had no idea what depression was, and neither really did either my sisters or my mom at the time either. But the depression was real, and it was clearly hereditary because my mom had so many days where she was just down and out, and it progressively got worse over time. And I think because there wasn't any type of really good resources for her to really tap into, the time there wasn't internet, there wasn't really anybody jumping on television to discuss depression. And my mom was extremely religious, back when I was a child, and she watched a lot of Christian network television. And back then, everything was kind of chalked up to, it was the devil, and just to pray. And that while that's a good thing, at the same time, depression is a very real thing. And there's definitely a scientific nature to it, and there's things that you can do that we didn't know how to do back then that can make it better. And time went by, my mom's depression got worse, so did mine. And as, you know, us three kids in the household, me and my sisters, as we started getting older and they started moving out, my depression started really kicking in, and it didn't really hit me hard to the point to where it became almost unbearable and was like, okay, this is like a very questionable problem, until something clicked in me in my 8th grade year, to where I stopped caring as much as I used to about my academics, about, you know, my grades, my schoolwork, my attendance, stuff like that. And it turned into a point to where my only reasoning for going to school was just to be around friends and goof off, really. And because of that, I skated by on some classes and really skimmed by on my grades, but there were two classes that I actually failed by a total of 3 points, one by two and one by one. And these teachers were not lenient, because these teachers quite honestly put up with a lot of crap with me. I would go in their classes and just put my head down, go to sleep, or just be the class clown on some days, and really gave them problems that I shouldn't have been giving them. But it when the reality of the fact that I failed actually set in, and I was sitting in my room, I remember thinking about the fact that all of my friends that were really close to me and meant a lot to me were now going to be moving on to the next level, going to high school, and I was going to be stuck in junior high again, in 8th grade, with kids younger than me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And like I had a major awakening, and anxiety really kicked in, to where I started pressuring my mom to like do whatever it took to like get me into summer school. And I was ready to turn things around, because I knew without a shadow of a doubt I didn't want to go that route for the rest of my life. But my mother's depression and anxiety, that had now gotten worse by the time that I was a teenager, had got to the point with her to where it had confided her to her home, to the point that where she was unwilling to just go up to my school and sign the fee waiver for me to go to summer school. I was going to be able to go for free, and she wouldn't go do it. She made every excuse in the book. And I had a friend that was actually held back with me, and he was going to summer school, and I was close with his parents as well, and his mom was willing to go up there and sign or fill out whatever necessary paperwork, as long as my mom would do whatever's necessary. If she would bring the paperwork to her, my mom still refused for absolutely no reason, and she couldn't really give an explanation. And I didn't understand it, because I didn't understand depression and anxiety like that. I just thought that she was being stubborn, and I didn't understand that it was a mental illness that she was battling. But because of it, it affected me in such a negative way when I ultimately wasn't able to go to summer school, and I was held back and had to return to junior high. That entire summer, I kid you not, for I think a month and a half straight, I stayed in my bedroom, and most of the time I stayed in my bed. Either, you know, I'm not sitting here sobbing or anything, but there were tears at times. I would just lay in my bed with the light out. I would hear kids outside, summertime, everybody's playing, you know, there would be times my mom would come in, check on me, try to encourage me to, get outside, go play or something like that. And I just couldn't. I couldn't. I was so devastated by what had happened and so angry and frustrated with my mom for doing that for, in my opinion, no reason at all, no excuse. So it formed a negative wedge in between me and my mom that summer. And I down spiraled terribly from there on out. And basically, that following year in eighth grade, I ended up ultimately doing worse than I had ever done before academically. I did not care at all. And not only was I doing drugs, I was selling them as well for money because I didn't care about school. I didn't care about the people around me. Couldn't stand my teachers. And my environment in Antioch, Tennessee back then, it was so terrible at the time. I mean, I hated everything. Everyone and everything around that time frame. And the only thing that felt like it helped was when I got high was something. And so I am. I'm like I don't know how old I was. I was like a 15, 16-year-old kid smoking like a pack of cigarettes a day and smoking weed like crazy. And now popping pills to try and numb the depression. And what I thought was, bringing some kind of normalcy to my life, which actually was turning my life upside down. But the drugs and all this stuff just started getting progressively worse over time, and I started getting a little in over my head with selling it around town to the point where I got sloppy with it and I ended up getting robbed. Twice, actually. The first time was kind of like a quick hit on me and a few of my friends and wasn't very threatening. But the second time was actually on my own porch with a gun to my head. And they got everything that I had. And I was just like, man, I could have died, I could have died. I would have been a 16-year-old kid and I could have died because of some nonsense like that. But luckily they didn't pull the trigger or accidentally pull it. And luckily for me, that was enough of a wake-up call for me to stop selling it, but it didn't stop me from doing it. However, my sister, who is just a little bit older than me, the younger sister of the two, she caught wind that I had been robbed, and for the second time. And she contacted me without my mom knowing. And we had a long talk. It was probably about 2 hours long. And we concocted a plan behind my mom's back for me to basically pack my things in the middle of the night and leave without my mom knowing or my mom's consent, because my sister was concerned that I was going to end up dead. So I agreed. I was ready to leave. I was ready for a fresh start. And I did not like the trajectory of my life, but I knew I was going to have to make some severe changes. So in that short time frame, I cold turkey quit everything that I was doing, quit smoking weed, quit taking pills, and I said, I'm going to better my life. I'm going to better my life. I'm going to go to Florida, and I'm going to make things better, and I'm going to do things the right way. And I never touched another pill again. And thank God for that. I really do. And I owe a lot of thanks to my sister for that, for stepping up to the plate. Now, mind you, my mom was not only devastated, but irate at the fact that I was willing to just abruptly walk away from her like that. But I'm thankful for the fact that me and my mom was able to, reconcile our relationship later on once I got everything together, and years later. But it was a rough time because I did worry about my mom. I worried about leaving my mom there by herself. I knew that she had some issues, and it scared me because I was terrified that I might be the straw that broke the camel's back under those circumstances, and I worried about her, her mental well-being at that time, even though I didn't even know what that was or what that meant. But I left, and my brother-in-law came and got me. I left that day and arrived in Florida, and I thought everything was on the up and up, and little did I know that that's just not how it works when you have mental illness such as depression or anxiety and stuff like that. And I battled things like that over the years through living in Florida with my sister. And I'm sure my sister has some stories to tell through my growing pains of becoming a young adult and also battling the depression. There was many times where when I was living with my sister, I actually um, I'd be in my room, and she would come in and like, why is it so dark in here? Why you got the lights off? Are you all right? And she'd start talking to me. And, she actually, she was kind of in tune with mental health at this point in her life when I wasn't. And she kind of opened the door up and introduced me to some of the coping mechanisms and stuff like that, because she faced a lot of the same things when she joined the military. She joined the Navy, and faced a lot of the depression as well, and actually had some experience with going to therapy and speaking to a psychiatrist. She took a little bit of light medication for some depression that she was battling when she would be on debt and stuff like that. And it was not uncommon for people in her career path to experience some of the same things. So she had a bit of experience that she was able to share, and she encouraged me to check out like therapy and stuff like that. And I gave it a shot. I gave Zoloft a shot and a couple other medications, because there would be times where I'm just like, I would talk to her and I just break down crying. I didn't even know why. And my sister would be like, yeah, clearly, you got some issues that you haven't addressed, that you're kind of bottling up, and it's boiling up to the surface and catching you off guard. But she was such a big help in my life in dealing with some of those things and learning some of the better coping mechanisms that I still use today. But a lot of people a lot of people know the story about what happened in my life in 2009. I met a girl that I fell in love with named Sahel Kazemi, and we had a very good relationship for the first like 3.5 years that we were together. Faced a lot of up and downs together, but always persevered and made it through. We were a very good couple until the end, and when we weren't, and when we officially broke up. But I battled a lot of the most severe depression and anxiety throughout those years with Jenny is who she was to me. And those years with her, she helped me through a lot of it. She had no history with it. She didn't really deal with any type of mental illnesses or anything like that, but she knew I had some things from my childhood and my past and stuff like that that I had bottled up over the years, and she kind of helped me get through some of those things. And she was a very understanding, loving, and caring person, and that helped me tremendously and made me love her even more for it. But when all that situation happened with Steve McNair, after we broke up, and she started seeing him, and then they tragically lost their lives on July 4th, 2009. That was the worst pain that I had ever felt in my entire life. It's indescribable how I felt. And I still deal with some of that pain to this day, and it's been 14 years. And I've lived a lot of life since then. I became a father. I've learned happiness that I never knew even existed, by being a father, and discovered a love that I never knew I would ever find by, an unconditional love that I developed for my children. But that pain that I felt was so dark and just evil is what I could describe it as. It was just horrible beyond belief. And I had never felt that low in my entire life, to the point to where I felt like it would never be better, because it was impossible for me to be better. And quite honestly, there were points where I didn't want to be better, because I felt guilty if I did get better. Because, and I'll try to explain, like, when I say I felt guilty for feeling better, it's because Jenny was dead. The only girl that I had ever loved in my entire life. And for me to get better after she had died, I felt guilty, because I felt like I should have died with her. Or, better yet, I felt guilty because I even brought her up to Nashville with me. And if it wasn't for that, she would have never been in this situation to begin with. And I wanted to die. I wanted to die. I did not want to live. I felt like I didn't deserve to live. And there was a couple of times where, I actually toyed with the idea of taking my own life. But I could never muster up the courage to do it. And I thank God that I never did that, because my two sons and my daughter would not exist. And I look at their faces and I see them living their little lives, and I can't even fathom taking that away from them. And that's something that would have happened had I made that decision back then. And it took absolutely everything in me, every bit of strength inside of me to push through those next few months and get to a part of in my life to where I could start building on something, But it took me tearing myself down to that point for me to finally realize, like, okay, this is very serious, and this is something that actually needs to be addressed. And so I started going to therapy, started talking. That was step one. It helped drastically. And I was poor. I mean, I'll just say that. I didn't have a lot of money back then. I was a manager at White Castle at the time. and I wasn't making money at all. I was making enough to cover my bills, but I was at the same time like I was burning CDs and DVDs and selling them on the side to make some extra cash to in turn take that money and try to, you know, push that into, musical equipment and recording equipment to try and do something with my music, which unfortunately that was cut short because of how negative that situation had become in my life and how negatively I was viewed moving forward beyond that situation because when that happened, what a lot of people don't understand is when that happened, a lot of people considered me to be some kind of part of that situation. They thought I had to have known something, could have possibly been there or had something to do with it. But the truth of the matter was when that happened, the FBI or the detectives that were running that case, they were all over it immediately. And, they raided my job and got the video footage of me being on camera until like 3:45 in the morning, right? So I was accounted for. And they got that footage, I think, like 2 days after that all happened. But they sat on that information and did not disclose that information publicly until almost a month later, which is why all the negative speculation was surrounding me for so long that it got to the point to where people had already made up in their minds that I was guilty of something that I did not do, even though they presented the proof later on that I didn't and that I was innocent, and they completely cleared me. And that haunted me the rest of my life. So when I tell you that the worst amount of depression that I have ever felt in my entire life set in when that happened, I was not only having to cope with the worst onset of depression and anxiety that I had ever felt in my entire life, at the lowest of lows that I had ever been in my entire life, I was also having to filter through all the negative perception surrounding my name by the general public, who now knew who I was, knew where I lived, knew where I worked, and they all thought I was a killer. So while I'm mourning the only girl that I had ever loved in the worst way possible, and honestly, on a low-key frame, subliminally, like, I was also mourning the death of Steve McNair. He was my favorite football player of all time. All time. I had every jersey in every color. I had posters of this guy on my wall as a kid. I cried when we lost the Super Bowl because I wanted him to win a Super Bowl so bad. So, a lot of people have their, this perception of me having this like hate for Steve McNair. What they don't understand is Steve McNair didn't come in and take Jenny away from me. Me and Jenny were broken up when they met. We were just still intertwined because there was a lot of stuff that needed sorted out, but we were not together. And, we never even met personally, face to face, never talked to each other on the phone. I don't know what. I mean, I know he was not happy about the fact that she still had contact with me every once in a while, and he gave her problems about that. But outside of that, me and him never had any type of run-ins. You know what I mean? And I still had this, like, he was a superhero to me, as a kid, like, in the back of my mind. So, like, on a different level, when they both passed like that, it was like I'm seeing the world mourn Steve McNair, and I'm like, like I'm mourning him to a certain extent as well. And it's very hard to describe the feeling, because it's like I was sad about him passing, but at the same time it was like I was mad at the same time, because I felt like none of this should have ever happened, and Jenny wouldn't have been dead if it wasn't for him. And it was just it was such a confusing and painful time in my life. And you know, pushing through and getting to the point of starting to work on myself and do the necessary things to get back to some form of normalcy in my life. I went to therapy. They started talking to me, but that was a difficult scenario, because where we would begin in the first couple frames of, talking and getting to know each other, we would start digging into why I was there, and then I would have to reveal why I was ultimately there, and then it became more of like a questionnaire, and we really would focus on that topic to the point to where I got like to the point where I was like, okay, we're not, I see what we're doing here. But it's crazy, because when I went to therapy, like I was saying before, I got a little bit off track, kind of forgot what I was talking about. But going back to them sitting on that information for so long, I had already started going to therapy when a lot of people still didn't know that I was innocent. And that was difficult, because when it was revealed to the therapist that I was actually, Sahel's or Jenny's ex-boyfriend, and that all had just happened, it was very fresh. And they're looking at me like, oh wow. Like, so I was starting to get different questions. You know what I mean? So when they finally revealed, the chief of police like took the podium and went on, public television networks, more local, I think, and went live and said that I was no longer a suspect, which is crazy to me, because when I was actually, I went down to the police station. My dad took me and my sisters down to the police station before we even knew Jenny was involved. We were looking for her and hoping that she was safe, but we couldn't find her, right? So we went down to the police station and reported her missing. And we were trying to like convey with them anything that we knew and talk to them and like get them to try and help us like locate her, find her, because we didn't know what was going on. And you know, they ended up coming back. The same two detectives that I actually talked to contacted me, and they brought me in for questioning, right? So I went down there, and the very first thing that they said to me, sitting in front of me, they said, first and foremost, we want you to know that we know you had nothing to do with this. It was a huge sigh of relief, and I felt very, very relieved to hear them say that, and excited a bit to actually move forward and like, okay, like, all right, so now that that's out of the way, let's find out the truth. Let's get to the bottom of this, right? So, I offered them like my phone. They held on to my phone for like 2 days. It was an open book. My life was an open book to them. I offered them everything that they needed, and I stayed in close contact with them. Anytime they had a question, I answered it. Anytime that I could offer any type of anything, I gave it to them. And what killed me was the fact that they knew this from the get-go by knowing that I was at work 2 days after this had happened. No, they knew that I was at work up until almost 4 a.m. But they sat on that info to the point to where the general public locally, I mean, not just locally, but locally, hated me so bad and thought that I had something to do with this, to the extent that I started getting death threats and people were showing up to my job threatening me. People were trying to fight me. I had a point in my life where I was going to the gas station to go buy some cigarettes, and a car like screeched trying to like stop abruptly, and windows rolled down, and they yelled my name, and because I looked, they took that as, yeah, that's him. And then they started chasing after me. I had to run into the gas station and tell the cop, and they drove off. And it just got nuts to the point where I felt like my safety was definitely like compromised. And it got so bad to where not only like the general public was becoming, volatile and threatening, that news reporters were camping outside of my house, and like my job, it got to the point where I couldn't come to work, so they gave me like an extended bereavement. So I fled to Lebanon and was out in Lebanon with my sister until things kind of blew over and I could come back. But when I did come back, boy, did that depression really kick in. And when that depression kicked in, that's when I went from trying therapy to going to a psychiatrist for medication. And they started off light at first, and it did not help. So it got stronger and stronger. And it got to the point where, they were doing so many different trial and error medications to where like I was having hallucinations. I was waking up in the middle of the night. There was at one point where I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought Jenny was standing in my room. Like I could see her vividly. And just stuff like that was like insane. And it scared me to the point to where I'm like, this is going to kill me. And so I went cold turkey and got off of that too. But after that, I was later contacted through it was kind of like an unexpected reconnection with a woman who I ended up later marrying, that I had cut off contact with about 6 months before. And because of everything that I was dealing with, I wanted so badly to feel like there was hope again. And by the way that me and my now ex-wife was reconnected, it gave me a feeling that I didn't think that I would ever feel again. And I didn't think that I would ever find love again, but because of her, I felt like there was a chance that I could love and feel loved again. But unfortunately, and I don't want to dive too much into my marriage, it's a long story, and it has its absolute ups and downs, and there are some downs in the story of my marriage. But one thing that I'll give credit to my ex-wife for was she definitely did pull me out of this deep dark hole that I never thought that I would ever find myself climbing up out of. And she gave me hope again. And there were some things. I mean, we both, my ex-wife, she also battled depression and anxiety and other things as well herself. So it was a bad mix when it got bad. And, you know, it's unfortunate because, you know, it's like, to an extent, I feel like that, that portion of my life, I felt like, that because of a lot of things that happened from some very bad decisions that both of us made, we never even gave ourselves a fair shot from the get-go. Like that marriage was doomed from the start. And we fought so hard for so long, 10 years, to try to keep that together. But in the end, our mental health issues got the best of us in that marriage. I'll put it like that. But that's when depression really kicked in for me again. And, I've been divorced, like, I think, like, going on 5 years now. And I'd say that's the second worst part of my life that I had ever felt. And real low, real low. I had to completely rediscover myself at that point in time, because for 10 years, I went from being a 23-year-old young adult full of life, goals, hopes, dreams, to rapidly becoming a father and rushing into, fatherhood, serious life matters, while learning how to be a husband and a father at the same time, to reaching a point in that marriage of absolutely adoring being a husband and a father and completely content with that. And the only issues in my life being financial and, wanting better for my wife and my family at the time, to losing that and feeling ashamed that you did lose that, and feeling guilty for your kids having to go through that, because that was something that I definitely did not want to happen, because, that happened to me. I grew up being raised by a single mom, and, me and my dad, when I was a kid, we didn't have a good relationship because my mom dealt with so many mental health issues that her resentment towards my dad formed a wedge in between us kids and our dad. And the only way that we really established a relationship with him later on was by us getting old enough to be able to make the conscious decision to actually develop a relationship with our dad. And thank God, I didn't buy into a lot of the things that were told to me, because my dad is an amazing man. And he has helped me in so many tremendous ways. I can't thank him enough for stepping up to the plate later on in my life, when it was near impossible for him to do that at the younger years of my life. But, he was right there when that divorce happened and I had nowhere to go. I had lost everything. I lost my home. I lost all of my belongings. And I only had a car that was in my father-in-law's name, and a garbage bag of a few outfits in my work uniform. And that's it. I had my wallet. But called my dad. I was real teared up and told him, Dad, I don't know what to do. I don't have anywhere to go. And my dad said, well, I'll be right there. And he was right there. And, I felt miserable, and he picked me up. he took me to his house, and we immediately got to work in establishing myself there, staying with him. And he made that situation as comfortable as possible. And I can't thank him enough for that, because he, he was dealing with his own loss, because he lost his wife to cancer not too long before. And where we both could definitely appreciate the company, he also had, his own things that he was battling inside, but he put so much energy into helping me through that situation. It's unreal how much he stepped up to the plate, and I will man, I'm telling you, I will forever be thankful for that. But I ultimately ended up losing the car, naturally, because it wasn't mine. I had to give it back. But you know what he did? Gave me his truck. His only truck that he had for years, that he kept in phenomenal condition. Just gave it to me. I had never had anything like that given to me in my life, and I probably rubbed him the wrong way, to be honest, in the way that I reacted, because when he gave me that truck, I was like so dumbfounded and shocked. I probably didn't react the way that he expected me to react, or I didn't come off probably grateful enough. But I hope he understands how appreciative I was of that moment and him giving me that truck, because God, did that truck save my life at the time, because it made it possible for me to get back and forth to work. I was able to put in extra work on some side jobs to cover some expenses. And what's crazy is, like, me and my ex-wife were at horrible odds. We were at the point where we hated each other for the way that divorce had went through, and I was battling with everything in me to establish some kind of rights and visitation to my sons. I had not seen them for months. And I will definitely explain a lot of how that went down when it's necessary. Sorry, I'm actually battling through a cold right now. Man, I think my Dayquil is wearing off, so bear with me here. My throat's getting a little dry, but he let me stay there for however long I needed to, and he didn't charge me a dime, making it possible for me to work full time and put all of my money into paying attorneys to help me in the court battle, so that I could establish some kind of court-ordered relationship with my sons. And if it was not for my dad, I do not believe I would have a close relationship with my sons like I do to this day. And circling back around, I know I dove real deep into some things talking about this. I know I probably got to sew it up here soon, but the depression, the anxiety that I felt, that I battled through in some of these terrible situations, such as what happened in 2009, and the trial and error of the things that I experimented with to try and help me cope with the depression, the anxiety, and pushing through some of these situations, and the lowest of the lows that I felt. And then fast forwarding through the issues of my marriage, and ultimately, going through the divorce, and coping through losing, the being a full-time father, which is what I cherish so much in my life, and coping with, ultimately my marriage failing, and having to reinvent myself again, and dig myself up out of that black hole again, and find, things that made me, happy again, because I had lost everything that I felt like made me happy in life. So I had to find things again outside of those things, which were my kids, my marriage, the home we had got together. And so I had to search high and low, and it was not easy. But I did. And that's what's important. I did. I did not give up. I pushed and pushed. And when I felt like that I couldn't push anymore, I pushed again. Because there was something inside of me that would not let me give up. And that, I truly believe, is inside of every one of us. Because everyone deals with, these battles. It may not be as severe as others, but everybody has their lowest points in their life. And my message, my goal by sharing my story and my battle with depression and anxiety, my goal is to be an example for those who are on YouTube or on Spotify searching for someone that they could hopefully relate to, that is anywhere close to what they're dealing with in life in the moment, that feel hopeless and can't find help anywhere else. My goal is to be that light in the darkness that I searched for myself that I couldn't find. I want to be that voice. I want to be that person. I want to utilize this platform to share those stories of the lowest points of my life to hopefully help other people that are going through some of the worst things in their life and they don't feel like they have a shot of getting better. And the message is, yeah, you do and you will. Whether it be medication, therapy, family, friends, finding a new hobby, a new passion, explore every avenue. That's what I did. I tried everything. And some things didn't work, but some things did. And for me personally, mine, like I said, I gave up on therapy and I cold turkey quit medication because I feel like I belonged in Arkham Asylum in Gotham City somewhere after taking some of those meds. But the biggest form of therapy for me was reacquainting myself with my sisters and establishing a close relationship with them again, because I knew that they dealt with a lot of the same stuff as a child, so that I understood that they could relate a lot of times and offer the best advice, to be quite honest. And also revisiting a passion of mine that I developed as a young adult, which was traveling. And I had actually developed that passion with Jenny. When I was with Jenny, me and Jenny started traveling anywhere and everywhere we possibly could. And one of the best trips of my life, albeit we were broken up when we went, but one of the best trips of my life was when we went to Hawaii together. It was amazing. It was life-changing, actually. It really opened my eyes up and let me know, wow, I can do this. I can really do this. I can see places I never thought I'd see and experience things that I never thought I would experience. And once I'd established myself after living with my dad, and in the later years, or not years, I wasn't with him for years, but in the later stages of living with him, me and my dad started talking about traveling, and we actually traveled together a couple places, and it was really cool. And we got to make some memories together that we never were able to make when I was a kid. And I'm so grateful that we had. I got some pictures of my dad in Cancun, Mexico, staring at a crystal clear blue ocean. It's really cool. But yeah, just it really the traveling opened my eyes up to there is happiness out there again, and I'm so glad that I did not give up or give in to the way that I felt in those situations that tried so desperately to tear me down and quite frankly end it all. But I'm here. I'm here today, and I thank God that I am. And now in my life, my biggest goal is to be the best father that I possibly can be to my kids, set the best example for them that I possibly can, and have as many positive experiences that I can with my kids and create the most positive memories with them as possible. And that helps me. That's what makes me keep moving, keep pushing through. So whenever I face any obstacles now that I've got through some of the worst possible times in my life, now that I face these, minuscule problems that I encountered at this point in my life, I'm like, yeah, good shot. But you ain't seen me back in '09. So yeah, you ain't nothing. And I pushed through. So hopefully this hits with some people, and hopefully the right people find this and it helps them. And I'm looking forward to sharing some more stories. I got a lot of things I can unpack, and I'm ready to get it going. And I'm excited about it, and I'm excited about helping some people along the way. So if I can reach one person, that's good enough for me, and that's worth me sitting down at my table with a parched throat and a cough I'm trying to suppress right now. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it.